Welcome to Narayana IAS. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. For today's discussion, we've picked up a number of topics from The Hindu and the Indian Express, which are both relevant and important for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics. The first topic has been taken from page number 15 of The Hindu. Ukraine says it destroys another Russian warship in Black Sea. So this article discusses about Ukraine recently having claimed that it was responsible for sinking one of the Russian warships in the Black Sea by using high-tech drones. And here we'll be discussing about what are drones and what are the threats that actually it causes towards the internal security of a country. So moving forward, the second article has been taken from page number 8 of The Hindu, Green Jobs and the Problem of Gender Disparity. The good news here is as India actually transcends towards a green economy, it is estimated that it will actually lead to the creation of around 32 million jobs, but also that follows a lot of challenges with respect to that of gender parity in employment. So moving forward, the third article has been taken from page number 17 of the Indian Express, that is Methanesat. This article discusses about Methanesat, a recent satellite that has been launched by SpaceX Falcon 9 from California in order to track as well as measure the methane emissions at the global level. So here we'll be discussing about what is methane, what is the pollution that it actually causes, as well as the way forward. The fourth article has been taken from page number 17 of the Indian Express, fourth mass coral reef bleaching event soon. Here we'll be discussing about the recent observation and the warning that has been given by the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration with respect to that of the world, which is on the verge of facing the fourth mass coral reef bleaching. And also we'll be looking into what are coral reefs, what is this event of coral bleaching, and also we'll be looking at the three major mass coral bleaching events that has taken place in the past. The last article for the day has been taken from page number 6 of the Indian Express. Government considers Article 371 like shield for Ladakh. This article discusses about that in the backdrop of the recent protests that are taking place in Ladakh, the government is actually trying to implement the protection provisions as mentioned in Article 371 of the Constitution for the Union territories as well. And towards the end of the session, we will conclude the session by solving few of the prelims as well as the mains practice questions. Embark on your UPSC journey with Narayana IAS Academy. Our esteemed 5-year and 3-year integrated programs are now open for admissions in Hyderabad, Vijayawada and Nellore. Our courses include robust research and development backed initiatives such as our daily news analysis, which gives us a comprehensive view program for a broader understanding of current affairs. Our NCERT program, a foundational course that covers all NCERT syllabus, which is crucial for the UPSC preparation. And followed by this, our mentorship program for personalized guidance and regular test series for systematic learning and assessment is available for your subscription. So begin your journey to becoming a leader with Narayana IAS Academy today. The first article for the day is Ukraine says it destroyed another Russian warship at the Black Sea. So this particular article discusses about Ukraine having claimed that it was responsible for the sinking of one of the Russian warships in the Black Sea by using high-tech drones. So of late, if we see that this particular drone technology and drones have been in use often, on the one side, drones actually have a number of applications ranging from agriculture, administration, environment, as well as for the media. On the other side, it is a cause of concern as it has been used by the warfare. For example, the recent sinking of the Russian warship in the Black Sea by Ukraine, then the Ukraine-Russia conflict that we actually see in that backdrop, and also the Hamas as well as the Israel tug-of-war that has been happening. And also a couple of days back, we've actually discussed that India has signed a deal, that is a 2023 deal had been signed between the India and US to import the MQ-9 Reaper drones for the defense security and other purposes. Okay. So here in this article, we'll be discussing about drones, the implications of the drones that have been used for warfare, as well as what is the way forward. Okay. So moving forward, here we'll actually discuss about what are drones, which are unmanned aerial vehicles, and there was a previous year question on the same. Next is modernization of warfare is actually a very, very important dimension that has to be discussed with respect to the security point of view. And this can be mapped to GS Paper 3, security challenges and the management in the border areas for the mains examination. So moving forward, let us actually look at the previous year question, which was very recent, that is in 2023. There was a question on the use of unmanned aerial vehicle by our adversaries across the borders is a cause of concern and it is a threat to internal security. So that is how this particular topic becomes significant and relevant for the examination. So moving forward, now let us actually understand what the article is discussing. The Ukraine had actually claimed that it has sunk another Russian warship in the Black Sea recently using high-tech sea drones, okay? And the recent conflicts in Russia, Ukraine, and between Israel and Hamas have also seen the escalation or the increase in the use of drones, marking significant shift in the dynamics of modern warfare. That is, it is transcending from the conventional methods to the present method where drones are actually utilized for war purposes, okay? So moving forward, let us understand what are drones. So drones are small or medium-sized unmanned aerial vehicles that can be remotely controlled or that can fly autonomously. Example of drones actually include, if you see in this particular picture, these are multi-rotor drones, and there are drones with fixed wings. These are fixed wing drones, and another kind of drones are the single rotor drones. And moving ahead, you can see fixed wing hybrid VTOL. VTOL is nothing but vertically takeoff and land drones, okay? So the mechanism that has been utilized by the drones to actually function is they combine robotics with aeronautics, okay? And drones can come in various sizes as well as various forms, if we see, from small consumer models to large industrial grade machines, okay? So large drones are actually utilized for security purposes, whereas smaller ones are used for agriculture purposes, etc. Next, if we see the global commercial drone market, it is actually expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 13.9% from 2023 to 2030. And if you see the market in the year 2022, as per the estimate, it was around $19.89 billion. Now moving ahead, we can see the applications of drones in various sectors, okay? The first one is actually agriculture, which is useful for monitoring the crop as well as the soil health. Also, it is used for overseeing irrigation, conducting anti-locust operation. Locusts are pests, okay? Next one is the estimating the crop output. Moving on, they are used for the medical purposes, like it is used for delivery of medicines and also for collecting samples from remote areas. In the area or segment of administration, it is used for updating the land records, urban planning and management, monitoring the construction projects as well as prevention of any kind of encroachment that takes place in the lieu of any kind of new implementation of the construction projects. Next one, if you see media and entertainment, it is used for capturing high quality videographs and it is helpful for shooting at low altitudes without any kind of noise. Next one is to film in difficult to reach places. With respect to that of environmental monitoring, drones are again used for a number of purposes like tracking the wildlife populations, monitoring the deforestation and also observing any kind of changes, that is the forest cover, in the ecosystems. Moving on, it is used for defense as well as security purposes, for conducting surveillance, for facilitating remote communication, for counter-drone solutions and for protecting sensitive installations, especially along the border areas like the LOC, LAC, etc., along China and Pakistan. Moving ahead, let us actually look at the security threats that are emanating from the usage of drones, okay? First one, there is a huge scope for surveillance as well as espionage, okay? So here, there is unauthorized surveillance as well as intelligence gathering through the use of drones. For example, if you say there were 82 drones that were seized, 593 sightings along India-Pakistan border since the year 2019 till the present. The second one is there have been airspace violation because it caused a risk to commercial aviation and military operations. Example, if you see, Pakistani drone intrusion has been observed in India airspace and this was also since February 2019. Then, a lot of drones have actually been used for warfare as well as terrorism purposes. For example, they are used in attacks, they are used for delivering explosives, spreading harmful agents, and it is also used for bio-warfare. Next one, for example, if you see attack on Indian Air Force base, which was in Jammu and Kashmir in the year 2021. Next one, it is used for smuggling, where it uses a discrete method for smuggling the contraband. What is contraband? These are illegal products that have been smuggled, okay? In fact, even into the prisons. So example, if you see, there is a case of increasing use in Punjab for the drugs as well as weapons, and this has actually been from Pakistan. That is the trans-boundary movement from Pakistan into Punjab. Next one, it poses a lot of cyber security risks. That is, drones are actually susceptible to a lot of hacking, a lot of data theft, as well as unauthorized control of drones is a cause of concern. Next one is it leads to psychological warfare. That is extensive use of drones for attacking purposes to the neighboring country or to the enemy country. That is the surveillance or the show of force. It actually causes a lot of stress and fear among the population. So moving forward, let us now understand what are the challenges in tackling the drone threats. Okay, the first one is easy accessibility as well as availability. You can see that there is purchase of drones even from the e-commerce websites. Okay, so that is actually possible only for your agricultural purposes or medical purposes, but then there is a threat which is actually involved because it can potentially used for the other purposes also. The next one, due to its compact size as well as high maneuverability, there are a lot of security threats it actually causes. The next one, there are a lot of legal as well as the regulatory challenges concerning the same. And moving forward, the technological advancements are actually associated with that of drones. For example, if you see the MQ-9 drones which are to be imported from the US for India's security purposes, it has stealth features. What are stealth features? These cannot be detected by any radar. Okay, so this is what we need to say. So technological advancements are there such as stealth features and encryption. Encryption is something that we see in the WhatsApp type of communication where the data, it is actually end-to-end encrypted. That is, it cannot be decrypted or it cannot be decoded or deciphered easily. So stealth features and encryption is a possible challenge in tackling the threats by drones. Now let us actually see few of the steps in order to curb the menace that has been caused by the use of drone and the associated technology. The first one is we need to invest in the anti-drone technology where there has to be sufficient allocation of budget for the implementation of anti-drone technology and utilize the partnership with drone producing allies like US and Israel in order to acquire and co-manufacture the advanced military drones. Okay. Moving forward, the next one is to prioritize the critical areas of defense. Now we need to focus on key zones such as the military bases, such as VIP regions, in order to raise awareness and establish the drone defenses, ensuring that the protection to the vital areas are actually given. Next one is we need to develop counter-drone capabilities. That is what we actually said. Invest in anti-drone technology and develop the counter-drone capabilities like what the DRDO is recently aiming at initiatives in order to advance the anti-drone systems. And finally is enhancing the regulatory framework. This is nothing but we need to strengthen the drone regulation, strengthen the regulations to keep pace with technological advances so that we can actually ensure safety, privacy and security in airspace management, and at the same time also focus on fostering innovation and restricting it only for commercial purposes. The next article that we'll be discussing about is green jobs and the problem of gender disparity. So this particular article actually discusses about India's gradual transitioning to a low carbon based economy, which is seen as not only an environmental imperative but also an economic opportunity, as this will actually create 35 million jobs in the near future, and these are called as the green jobs. However, it actually has its own associated challenges such as the gender disparity, where the number or the percentage of women who are skilled to be absorbed into these green jobs are said to be or observed to be very, very low when compared to that of men. So while discussing this particular topic, it is important to understand we'll be discussing about gender gap in the green jobs, and also women empowerment is very important for our discussion. Then this can be mapped to GS paper 2 mains under social empowerment, role of women and women's organization for the examination. In the previous years, there have been questions on women as a topic, like women, gender budgeting, women empowerment, and what are the challenges that women actually face in the country, etc. For example, in 2016, we see that what is the need for gender budgeting, and in 2019, we see the continued challenges that women actually face in India against time and space. And in 2021, there was a question on the greater representation of women in higher judiciary in order to ensure diversity, inclusiveness, as well as equity. So moving on, let us actually understand what this particular article is talking about. So India's transition to a low carbon development is not just an environmental imperative, as we discussed, because we are going to cut short of the kind of emissions or the pollution that we are actually causing, but it is also the economic opportunity, because this is projected or estimated to create around 35 million green jobs by the year 2047. However, this particular move actually comes with both opportunities and challenges, whereas the opportunities are the job opportunities going to create, but the challenges is with respect to that of gender equity in employment, that is men versus women. Now let us actually understand what are green jobs. Okay, so according to the International Labour Organization, green jobs are positions in agriculture or manufacturing, researchers, administrative, as well as development and service activities, which are predominantly or majorly driven at preserving or restoring the quality of the environment. Moving forward, specifically, these jobs help to protect the ecosystems and biodiversity, as the name signifies, reduce the energy, materials and the water consumption through its high efficient strategies, decarbonize the economy, and minimize or altogether avoid generation of any kind of waste or pollution in the economy. Now let us actually look into the gender gap in green jobs, specifically with respect to India, as per the observation of various reports. Okay. So, the first one, if we see, there are a lot of gender gap in green jobs in India. The first one, if we see the workforce participation, renewable energy, that is India's adoption of renewable energy or transitioning towards the path of usage of renewable energy has increased by almost 250% from the year 2015 to 2021. However, the percentage of women are only 11% in solar rooftop sector. Similarly, if you actually see a study conducted by the Annual Survey of Industries from 2019 to 20, women concentration in industries like apparel, textile, leather, food, tobacco are mostly concentrated there. Okay, that is, women are concentrated only in these areas. As well as a 2019 report by Confederation of Indian Industry, it has reported that men dominate infrastructure, transport, construction, manufacturing, etc., where their concentration is 85%, whereas women are concentrated in sectors like apparel, textile, leather, food, tobacco, etc. Moving on, if we see the gender disparity in green skills, it is observed that 85% of green skills training is actually given to men. This is because of the existing social stigma as well as the norms that limit women their participation as well as their training. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually see in terms of STEM graduates in India. Okay, so here it says that in India, although women constitute a significant percentage of the STEM graduates, they're transitioning. Okay, so here if you see, significant percentage of women are there as STEM graduates. However, there is a low transition to the related employment that they actually find, especially the green job sector. Moving ahead, according to the World Bank, India's share of female STEM graduates is actually 42.7% as per the 2018 levels. Moving towards the next point, what is the other disparity is the rural versus the urban divide. Okay, so gender gap is actually more pronounced in the rural areas because of the traditional roles that women actually adopt to or they adapt to. Okay, due to traditional roles, due to lack of education as well as access to training, where men predominantly take up the role of going to the job and being absorbed into the labor market. Next one, what are the barriers that women actually face with respect to that of their participation in green jobs are? The first one is educational barriers. That is, what is the educational barrier? Despite achieving parity in primary education. See, if we see with respect to that of primary education, the enrollment of men, that is the boys versus girls, is almost the same. So we are trying to bridge that gap, okay? However, women are facing significant barriers in the STEM education, that is the higher education, which is influenced by societal norms and economic factors. Next one is, what are the social stigmas that are persistent? There are a lot of stereotypes and the gender roles that we actually adopt to ourselves, right? That discourage women from pursuing their careers in these sectors that are perceived as male dominant. For example, even if you take up a course in engineering, that is if you specifically go towards civil as well as mechanical engineering, you will actually see a number of men are actually greater. So it is observed as, or it is stereotyped as, a male dominated segment. Such as renewable energy and construction are also seen as the area where only men actually dominate, or male dominated professions. Moving forward, safety and accessibility. There are always concerns associated with respect to that of the workplace of the women and their accessibility to the job site, especially when you take construction sectors and if you take renewable energy sectors, we have the job sites far away, that is in the outskirts of the city, right, or outskirts of the region. So that is where women are prohibited, or they actually have the mental mindset that they would not be suitable for that particular job. Next one is, there is a lack of targeted policies as well as institutional support for women's participation in the green job, and this limits their opportunity for any kind of training, any kind of mentorship that they go through, as well as they are forbidden from further career advancement. Okay. So moving forward, let us see what can be the possible solutions in order to address the gender gap in the green jobs. The first one is the policy intervention. So what do you mean by policy intervention is that we need to implement the policies that encourage female participation. So female participation has to be encouraged in the STEM field through lot of scholarships. There has to be quotas as well as awareness campaigns. Examples actually include schemes such as Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme of the government, then Pragati scholarship for girls in technical education, etc. The second solution can be skill development as well as training that is actually provided to women. So the programs have to be tailored in such a way that it will equip the women with necessary skills that are required for taking up these green jobs. For example, there is Skill India mission to actually impart skills, then green skill development program by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So all these should be done. The next one is creating safe work environment. Okay, so here there has to be enforcement of strict policies against any kind of harassments that they go through, both sexual and moral, and there has to be ensured safe working condition for women. So here, this is where we have the legal frameworks and laws such as the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act of 2018, Rashtriya Mahila Kosh and Mahila E-Heart, etc. are some of the initiatives of the government. Next one is promoting women entrepreneurs. This is actually very, very important. And here, what you have to do is we need to support female-led startups and businesses, make the credit accessible to them. So, access credit. There has to be a lot of mentorship programs and lot of networking opportunities. And these are provided by schemes such as the Stand Up India scheme as well as Mahila Shakti Kendra scheme. The last one is gender responsive budgeting should be there. That is, allocation of resources and funds should be there. And state budgets should be there in order to support women. Budget support have to be given to women. They have to be given sufficient women training and entrepreneurship for further enrollment and employment in the green jobs. Okay. So, the example is the gender budget statement, the Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin as well as the Kaushalya Yojana. Okay. So, moving forward, let us actually look at some of the global best practices towards skilling or, gender empowerment. So, first one, if we say Germany, the Energy Wende, that is Energy Transition Program, this actually includes initiatives specifically that are aimed at increasing women's participation in the renewable energy sectors, and this is provided through vocational training and university courses. Next one, if you actually see in Kenya, the Women in Sustainable Energy and Entrepreneurship Initiative, that is the WISE initiative. This provides mentorship as well as financial support to women entrepreneurs in renewable energy sector. Moving ahead, in Canada, if you see the government's Women in Construction Fund, this actually aims to increase women's participation in the green construction industry because the government actually provides grants as well as apprenticeships. Okay, so this is very, very important for your gender disparity as well as social justice and society point of view in order to understand or quote as best case studies in case if we have actually asked about the initiatives that the globally that the countries have taken place in order to empower their women. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Methanesat. So this is nothing but it discusses about a satellite which will be tracking as well as measuring the methane emissions at a global scale, and this satellite has been recently launched by the SpaceX Falcon 9 from California. Okay, so here it is important to understand what is methane pollution, and this forms an essential part of global warming, and we can map this to climate change under prelims, that is the syllabus of UPSC, as well as under GS paper 3 it can be mapped under environmental pollution and degradation as well as conservation, okay, for the mains examination. Moving forward, if you look at the previous year questions, we have a question that has been asked in the year 2022 regarding the global warming as well as its effect on this particular global climate. And in the year 2019, there was a prelims question that had been asked on methane hydrate. So here it is very, very important to understand Methanesat as well as methane emissions and how it is actually contributing to the phenomena of global warming. So moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular news is about. So Methanesat, a satellite which can track and measure methane emissions at a global scale, was launched aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from California. So now it is important to understand what are the characteristic features of this Methanesat and how helpful it is going to be at detecting the global scale emissions of methane, that is CH4. So here, these are the characteristic features of this particular satellite. It was launched for the purpose of monitoring and measuring global methane emissions, especially in the sectors of oil as well as the gas. And here it is important to understand it will orbit around the Earth 15 times a day, and it will also provide data, that is it provides public data in near real time, that is it will be free in the near future. And also it has been launched by the Environmental Defense Fund with the Harvard University and also Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory and the New Zealand Space Agency. Now looking at the technology that it is actually using in order to function is that it uses high resolution infrared sensors as well as spectrometer that enables to detect the methane concentrations even when it is as low as 3 parts per billion. So what do you mean by parts per billion? It is nothing but of the total 1000 million units of mass, how much units of mass does this particulate matter or the CH4 molecules actually occupy, or the same thing applies to CO2 also. That is, out of the 1000 million units of mass of a particular matter, how much units of mass that CH4 actually occupies its parts per billion. Okay. Moving on to the coverage and capability, the particular satellite has a wide field of view and it is actually specially utilized for large area monitoring. Okay, and then this identifies large as well as small sources of methane emissions. Okay. So now looking at the significance of this particular satellite is that it actually helps to support the global climate actions like the Global Methane Pledge. And what is this Global Methane Pledge? This is nothing but it is a voluntary framework that has been led by the United States and the EU, which actually aims at reducing the human caused methane emission, reduce it by 30% by 2030 when compared to 2020 levels. And this particular JMP was actually adopted in the COP26 meet at Glasgow that actually took place in 2021, and it is non-binding in nature. This is very, very important. And also the individual countries are not assigned targets or they are not bound by the resolutions that this Global Methane Pledge actually specifies. Moving forward, it also enhances the transparency and accountability with public data access. So now let us actually understand what methane is all about. If you look at this particular diagram, you know the chemical formula for it is CH4. And let's actually look at some of its physical properties. It is a colorless, odorless as well as highly inflammable gas that is lighter than air. And it is very, very important to note that it is the second largest contributor to global warming after carbon dioxide. And according to UNEP, that is the United Nations Environment Program, over a period of 20 years, methane has a capability of causing global warming 80 times more when compared to that of carbon dioxide. And also, methane actually has a potential to contribute to the formation of ground level ozone. Here it is important to understand what is this ground level ozone. So, this is nothing but it is also called as the surface level ozone or the tropospheric ozone, which is a harmful air pollutant that actually forms when the pollutants that has been released from cars and power plants, industries, all these pollutants, when they actually react chemically under sunlight, this helps or this actually leads to the formation of ground level ozone. And the studies in 2022 have actually observed that this kind of ground level ozone has a toxic capability or a potential of causing over 1 million premature deaths every year, okay? That is annually. Now let us actually move forward. The IEA, it has actually found out that the largest source of anthropogenic methane emissions is agriculture. So how agriculture? This is by the utilization of organic manure, through livestock rearing. Because livestock, when they actually digest the food, it results in the emission of CH4. And also, it is very, very important to know that India's share in global methane emissions actually stand at 8.3%. The next article that we'll be discussing about is 4th Mass Coral Reef Bleaching Event Soon, what NOAA said. So, this particular article talks about the observation or the warning that has been given by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which actually said that the world is on the verge of the 4th mass coral bleaching event, and this event will actually cause the death and the wiping off of many tropical reefs, and also it actually includes the part of the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what are coral reefs and what are the essential conditions for its growth and sustenance, and it is an essential part of climate change. So we can actually map it to the climate change under prelims under your UPSC syllabus and GS paper 3 of mains under environmental pollution and degradation and conservation. So moving forward, there have been previous year questions that have been asked on the impact of the climate change on the coral reefs. Let us actually see. So there was a question in mains in 2019 that asked the impact on global warming on the coral life systems. And moving ahead in 2019 prelims, there was again a question on the coral reef. So this particular topic of coral reefs become important for both your prelims as well as your mains examination. So moving forward, let us understand this particular article. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the world is on the verge of a 4th mass coral bleaching event, and this event is capable of causing death of many tropical reefs, including parts of the Great Barrier Reef. Now, it is important to understand what are coral reefs, okay? So, understanding coral reefs, if you look at this particular picture, you can see that these are colorful underwater marine ecosystems, okay? So, let us understand the coral reefs are massive underwater structures or ecosystems with vibrant colors and diverse marine life. So, these are majorly or they are made up of limestone from coral polyps. So, what are coral polyps? These are tiny marine animals that actually excrete their exoskeleton, which is made up of calcium carbonate. So, let us see. Coral polyps are tiny marine animals which are living in the colonies that secrete the calcium carbonate as exoskeletons. And these calcium carbonate exoskeletons, they accumulate over millions of years and they actually form the coral reefs. Now, if we see the ecological significance, it is important that it supports 25% of the marine species, and that is why they are referred to as the rainforest of the seas. This is very, very, very important. So now moving forward, let us actually look at the suitable or the conducive conditions for the formation of the corals. The first one is it requires sufficient amount of sunlight, that is photic. Here it requires the shallow water for sunlight, and this water shall be clean without pollution. Okay, so here you can say the water should be clear so that it actually essentially allows the penetration of sunlight to the place where the corals actually are surviving. Next one is warm water temperature. The temperature should ideally be between 20 to 32 degrees Celsius, and moving on, it needs clean water, as I told you, because the corals are very sensitive to pollution as well as any kind of sediment deposition. And finally, if you see, the salt water must actually contain the salinity only between 27 to 40 parts per thousand. So what do you mean by salinity? Salinity is nothing but the amount of dissolved salts that is actually present in the sea or the ocean water. Now, if we look at the location and the distribution of corals, so we can actually see that most of the corals are located between the Tropic of Cancer as well as the Tropic of Capricorn. And especially if you see with respect to the oceans, it is around the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. Okay. So this is actually the geographical distribution of corals, and also we can see that corals are found also in regions farther from that of equator. Why? It is actually seen in areas of Japan, which is supposed to be in the temperate regions, right, where the cold conditions are actually more prevalent, but it is because of ocean currents. Like for example, if you see the Kuroshio current, it is the warm current that actually makes the temperature little warmer and it makes conducive for the growth of the corals. And also we can see in the Florida region. Here also we can find the corals. And moving on, if we actually see the location of the corals along the western coast of continent, it's actually most of the times absent. For example, if you see in the western coast of Africa, the corals are actually absent. Why? Because of the cold Agulhas current. So here we need to understand the geographical distribution and their presence in the temperate regions also, like Florida as well as Japan. Why? Because of the ocean currents, and also because of cold ocean currents, they are absent along the western coast of the continents. And specifically, if you see the distribution of corals in India, we actually have them in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We have it in the Gulf of Mannar, Gulf of Kutch region, as well as the Lakshadweep Islands. And also towards the western coast of the Indian subcontinent, we can see it in Ratnagiri, which is on the coast of Maharashtra, and also in Gaveshani Bank. This is Karnataka. So moving forward, let us actually understand what is the threat to the corals by means of a process called as coral bleaching. Okay, so what is this coral bleaching? Coral bleaching is a phenomena where the corals actually lose the vibrant color that they have and they turn white. Okay, so coral bleaching essentially does not mean the death of the coral. Okay, it is just losing its color and it is exposed to severe stress as well as starvation. Now let us understand how it actually happens. Okay, so this coral bleaching is characterized, or it is defined, when the corals lose their vibrant colors and they turn white, and this is primarily caused by the changes in the water conditions, particularly when the temperature increases. So what happens is the corals actually share a symbiotic relationship with that of an algae called as zooxanthellae. So this zooxanthellae actually lives in the tissues of the corals, and it actually provides food to the corals and also gives them the color. So food is provided through the process of photosynthesis that actually happens inside the algae. In turn, the corals actually give habitat for this particular algae. So when the temperature of the water actually increases, and if it goes beyond 32 degrees Celsius, which is conducive for the growth of the corals, then what happens? There is an expelling of zooxanthellae from the coral tissues, and hence this actually leads to both the loss of food and color. Okay, so there are also other factors apart from increasing temperature. One might include the pollution. Next is overexposure to sunlight. And next is extreme low tides. So these also hamper or disturb the symbiotic relationship that the corals and the zooxanthellae actually share. And the consequence of this is the corals will be under lot of distress, disease, and starvation. And if this situation persists, it can actually lead to the death or the decline in the reef ecosystem. And the ecosystem actually, the health gets deteriorated, thereby leads to loss of biodiversity. So this is very simple to understand. So this is the process of coral bleaching. Okay. So moving forward, here if we actually see this particular picture, we can actually see that this is very healthy coral. That is, the coral and the algae are having a symbiotic relationship, and hence the color as well as the energy or the source of food that the algae acts as. Next is the stressed coral, where there is an expulsion of zooxanthellae from the tissues because of increased temperature. Not only that, pollution and other causes are there. Next, this is the bleached coral, where entirely the coral is under distress, starvation, etc., which will lose the zooxanthellae and turns white. And this particular situation, if persists, leads to the death and the loss of the biodiversity. Now moving on, here this is understanding the coral bleaching. So why does coral bleaching actually happens is, first there will be a change in the temperature, there will be runoff as well as pollution, and this will majorly affect the corals which are present in the shallow waters. Next one, overexposure to sunlight, it causes the bleaching of the corals. And finally, extreme low tides, which will actually expose the corals to the air, and this will cause the bleaching of the shallow corals. Now let us understand what is this phenomena of mass coral bleaching and how many events of mass coral bleaching has actually occurred in the past. The first one is, the mass coral bleaching refers to the large numbers of coral bleach over a widespread geographical region, and this is actually becoming more prevalent due to the ongoing rapid pace of global warming and climate change. And 3 mass coral bleaching events have actually occurred in the past. The first one is 1998 bleaching, which was a very strong El Nino event which affected coral reefs around the world, particularly those in the Indian Ocean, Southeast Asian reefs as well as the Pacific reefs. Next one actually occurred in 2010, which was a moderate El Nino year, and it impacted coral reefs across Southeast Asia, parts of Western Pacific, Indian Ocean, as well as the corals that are distributed in the Caribbean Sea. Moving forward, this was the longest, and the third event was the longest and the most widespread event, and it took place for a period of about 3 years from 2014 to 17. And this event actually impacted the Great Barrier Reef severely, and it has also affected certain regions of Caribbean, Pacific, Indian Ocean as well as the Red Sea. And according to the observations or the warning that has been given by the NOAA, the fourth one is actually likely to occur soon. The next article that we will be discussing about is Government Considers Article 371 like shield for Ladakh. So this particular article discusses about the recent protests that are taking place in Ladakh and the Union government having considered to implement the protection as actually mentioned under Article 371 of the Constitution for the Union territories as well. So in this particular article, we will be discussing about Article 371 of the Constitution and what is the special provisions in the Constitution and to what all states it actually is given to. Next, we can map it to Constitution under Prelims of the UPSC syllabus, and GS paper 2, it again comes under Constitution mains. Moving on, there have been previous year questions. That is, in 2016, there was a question on Article 370 of the Indian Constitution with respect to that of Jammu and Kashmir. And moving forward, in 2015, there was also a question in the prelims examination with respect to the provisions of the 5th and the 6th schedule. So these topics are very, very important for discussion for both prelims and mains examination. So moving forward, let us actually understand this particular article. In the backdrop of the recent protests in Ladakh, the central government is considering the implementation of the protections like those on Article 371 for the Union territories as well. Okay, so here we need to understand what is the backdrop or why is there a number of protests that are taking place in the Ladakh of late. So it is because Ladakh is actually seeking to be reinstated or given back the status of statehood, okay, from the current UT status. You know that Ladakh was actually a part of erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir, and it was separated from the state and had been given the status of union territory. Now the protests are to reinstate the statehood. The second one is they actually ask or demand more political autonomy and increased decision-making powers, and also they demand to be recognized as a tribal area under 6th schedule of the Constitution. Now let us actually understand what is this special provision under Article 371 of the Constitution, okay? So, Article 371 of the Constitution provides special provisions to certain Indian states because of the unique geography, the history, as well as the cultural backgrounds that certain states might actually have. It is part of Part 21 of the Constitution, which deals with temporary, transitional, and special provisions. Also, what is the purpose of this particular special provision, that is of Article 371A to J? It is to afford certain protections and rights to specific states of the country, to preserve the cultural heritage of that particular state, to address the backwardness, and to also ensure equitable development among these states. And the coverage, it covers up to 12 states, which include 6 of the northeastern states. Now here, if you look at this particular infographic, we can see the number of states which actually have special provisions. Like, let us quickly run through that. 371A to Nagaland, and according to 371B, special provisions are given to Assam. Then if you see 371C, Manipur, 371I is Goa, F is Sikkim, H is Arunachal Pradesh, and also Maharashtra and Gujarat are actually covered under this article. 371J is Hyderabad and the Karnataka region, E is Andhra Pradesh, 371G Mizoram, as well as Andhra Pradesh again in 371D. We will actually see the details of it over here. So what are the different provisions that this article actually provides is, Article 371 actually covers Maharashtra and Gujarat, where it gives special responsibilities for the governor regarding the development boards and equitable funding. Moving forward, if we see 371A, it is for Nagaland, where parliamentary acts not applicable in the states of Naga law and land without the resolution passed by the assembly. Moving forward, 371B to Assam, where the powers are given for creation of a committee for the tribal areas in the legislative assembly. Whereas in 371C, you can see Manipur, where the formation of committee for hill areas in the legislative assembly and annual report of the governor. Next one is 371D, that is given to Andhra Pradesh, where public employment and the education equitability, civil services organizations over here, and 371E again given to Andhra Pradesh regarding the establishment of a university by the parliament. Then Article 371F to Sikkim, where we have provision for Sikkim Legislative Assembly and the protection of rights over there. If we see 371G, it is for Mizoram, parliamentary acts not applicable in areas of Mizo law and the land without the assembly's resolution, as we actually saw in the case of Nagaland as well. Next, 371H, Arunachal Pradesh, where special responsibility of the governor is given with respect to that of law and order. Moving on, we have 371I for Goa, where the size of the legislative assembly and the related matters are actually given special provisions. And finally, 371J of Karnataka, where there will be separate development board for Hyderabad, Karnataka region, and there will be special reservation in education as well as jobs. Now let us solve few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. The first question reads, consider the following rivers: Danube, Dnieper, Dniester as well as Don. How many of the above rivers empty into the Black Sea? And if you go by the options, the answer will be option D, as all 4 rivers actually drain into the Black Sea. So this is actually evident from the map. So your answer is option D. Moving on to question number 2, which of the following are necessary conditions for the formation of the coral reef? First is shallow waters. Yes, this is correct. Average salinity less than 15 parts per thousand. This is actually wrong. And water temperatures of 20 to 32 degrees Celsius. This is actually correct. So since 1 and 3 are correct, we can actually mark it as C. So the answer will be option C. Moving forward, match the following coral reefs with the respective types. Let us actually match. Gulf of Mannar coral reefs. Yes, it is a fringing reef. This is correct. The Belize coral reef. Yes, it is a barrier reef. This is also correct. And C, Lakshadweep coral reefs. These are atoll in nature. So this is also correct. So going by the options, it is option A, A1, B2 and C3. So the correct answer will be option A. Moving on to question number 4. With reference to the Global Methane Pledge, that is the GMP, which was adopted in COP26 as we discussed, which of the following are correct? GMP aims to reduce the anthropogenic methane emissions by 30% by 2030 compared to the 2010 levels. This is wrong because it's 2020 levels. The GMP is non-binding in nature and individual countries are not assigned targets. This is correct. So, since only statement 2 is correct, the answer will be option B. Moving to the next question, question number 5. Consider the following states: Nagaland, Sikkim, Karnataka and Goa. For how many of the above states are special provisions under Article 371A to J of the Constitution is provided? Going by the options, and as far as we've actually discussed in the prelims article, all 4 are actually correct. So the answer is option D. Now moving on to the mains practice question, the question reads, in the light of the recent escalation in the use of unmanned aerial vehicles in global conflicts, discuss the various security threats emanating from the usage of UAVs. And this is a 10-mark question. Here, the approach to this particular question is broken into 3 parts, that is introduction, body and conclusion. In the introduction, first let us briefly define what are unmanned aerial vehicles and mention the recent uptick, that is, there is an increase in the usage of UAV in the recent times in the global conflicts as a backdrop. Next, if we move on to the body, we actually discuss about the major security threats because the question is actually inclined towards what are the security threats. So, we'll talk about surveillance and espionage, we'll talk about terrorist activity, smuggling, then cybersecurity risks, then psychological warfare, as well as airspace violation and safety hazards associated with it. So, moving on, we will actually conclude the answer by mentioning some of the counter strategies that the countries must actually follow in order to mitigate these risks, and we need to emphasize the need for a balanced approach that will foster innovation, at the same time ensure that there is security and protection of privacy. So we have come to the conclusion of the DNA analysis. For regular updates, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.